And welcome back to the Discover Virginia Beach podcast, where we set out to highlight all there is to discover in the Virginia Beach area for both tourists and locals alike. Today, we're thrilled to host the Senior Regional Director of Ducks Unlimited in Eastern Virginia, Sean Koyman. Sean supports more than 1,000 Ducks Unlimited volunteers, commonly referred to as DU, in Virginia, and their effort to conduct fundraising events in support of DU's mission to conserve wetlands and critical habitats for Virginia's migratory waterfowl. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Welcome. I am very thrilled to be here.
Wonderful. And I believe some congratulations are in order for you, Sean, because you recently achieved a very high award, the National Regional Director of the Year for Ducks Unlimited. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was for fiscal year 22. We just wrapped up fiscal year 23 as of the end of June. So we're starting the fundraising all over again with our fall fundraising season. So
wonderful, wonderful. And I would not be a genuine host if I didn't ask what was in the background. For those of you listening in audio, definitely go check out our video platforms. But Sean, would you maybe point out what exactly is behind you? Is that a turkey tail?
Yeah, that's a turkey fan. My wife shot that a few years back, her first turkey hunt with a good friend, Dan Ross, and I up in the northern neck of Virginia. And she had never been turkey hunting before. So we set it up, and I was supposed to videotape this now. And I was sitting on her left side. She was in the middle of the blind, and then Dan was sitting on the right side. And we had this hen turkey come in and paid us a little visit, and she exited stage right. The tom came in. We didn't even hear it. Came in from stage left. Next thing you know, he was strutting in the decoys. And so she commenced to shaking pretty bad. And obviously, I forgot to even start the video camera. So I completely failed on that aspect. But so her first shot when she took it was clearly over the head of the turkey. And my friend Dan was calming her down a little bit. So she commences with two more shots, and now she has no more shells in the gun. So Dan's asking me if I brought any shells, and well, it wasn't my gun. I was a guest, to take my wife hunting with him. So he finally found one last one, and I think he realized that she was shooting over because she wasn't really mounting the gun correctly. So he helped her adjust a little bit on that last shot, and so she wound up getting her first turkey. Which we had this shadow box done here locally with a great taxidermist over in the northern neck, and he did the fan for us. And then it was a double bearded turkey, so you see both beards in the back. And then it had inch and an eighth spurs, so the spurs are on either side. And we had all four of our shotgun shells put in that shadow box. So it sits in our home office, and I get reminded of that every time I'm working. So that's pretty cool.
Wow, what a fun story! And unfortunately, you had that fourth shotgun shell, or you probably would not have had the story to tell, or maybe at least a very different version, right?
Yeah, that's very true. Yes, sir.
Well, Sean, thanks so much for coming on today. You've made a very significant impact across Virginia, specifically when it comes to the conservation of wetlands and the critical habitats for Virginia's migratory fowl. Just what makes Virginia unique in a lot of regards. And I'm really curious, Sean, did you always want to save the ducks?
So it's interesting that you asked that. So if you look up my last name, it's from Holland, and it's an occupational name for a duck, like duck decoy, or a decoy creator, or even somebody that makes cages for waterfowl. So in a weird way, I kind of wound up landing in a career path that is somewhat fitting to my last name, but also a very good passion of mine that my dad got me started in back when I was little.
Wow, that's so interesting. So the name Koyman itself is I'm sorry, you said something that creates like bird
duck decoys specifically.
Duck decoys, okay.
Mm-hmm. Or cages for ducks, or a duck, I guess, not necessarily a duck breeder, but somebody that was in the occupation of raising waterfowl back in Holland.
Oh, wow. So could you walk us through the genesis of your career? Because from what I understand in your bio, you started off in your career in civil engineering. And so how did your early career prepare or shape the way you viewed conservation here in the Virginia area?
Yeah, it's an interesting path. I started down my college career going to the University of Toledo. And I did both my undergrad and graduate degrees there at UT in civil engineering, primarily in geotech engineering. So I did a lot of foundation designs, a lot of different things related to like soil reports for developing buildings, bridges, and whatnot. And so one day I just happened to get and this is back in the day. Now I'm really starting to feel old. My mom sent me a clipping for a job posting with Ducks Unlimited out of their Ann Arbor, Michigan office, and it was for an engineering tech role. And so she sent me this little clipping out of the Detroit Free Press, and so I had applied for that position. Did the interview, and it opened my eyes to the conservation world of Ducks Unlimited. I had no idea. I volunteered for the local chapter, and in Monroe, Michigan, and it went to the just a lot of cool stuff back in the day. Was very passionate about it. I loved my magazine, but I never really had connected the dots. Back then in terms of what that conservation work really looked like. So having the engineering background, I had applied for that job. They had offered me the position, but I was in a very awkward spot because I was still finishing up my master's degree, and I was still right in the midst of getting my professional license as an engineer as well. So I had to decline, but I kept the door open with them. And the need for a regional engineer came up a few years later, and they gave me a call. And I went down and looked at the position, which was actually based in North Carolina at the time, as a regional engineer for the South Atlantic region. And so that region covered North Carolina to Florida. And so I applied and successfully got that position and worked there for out of North Carolina, servicing our conservation work from North Carolina to Florida for the better part of 3 or 4 years. And then I had a unique opportunity to actually move over and take on the role of a regional director, which was helping volunteers do the fundraising work. And so that opportunity came up. So I slid over to do that in North Carolina specifically. And then from there, I was really helping volunteers raise money for the conservation work that I had actually done. So there was what a great way to see it, do it, conserve it, and then now bleed that passion back over to volunteers who are very passionate about what Ducks Unlimited does, and raise money for that effort. So that was pretty cool. So that was the start of it.
Wow. So let me get this straight here. So Sean, you started off in civil engineering for just like basically building buildings, right? And interacting with your community. Was that in Toledo area as well? Shout out to Rocky. Go Rocky.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I had done a lot, in that area. My Eagle Scout project with wood duck boxes at the local, wildlife management area back in Monroe, Michigan, and whatnot. And Monroe and Toledo are, side by side right there on the state line. So it kind of bled over for me from there.
So during that transition to North Carolina and Ohio, what was that major shift for you? I mean, was it just the fact that like you got this degree and you had done all these somewhat duck, waterfowl kind of activities that made you think to apply? Like, what was going on in your head when you got that clipping from your mom that first time?
Well, I had honestly, I thought that was going to be my career path for forever, for the most part, and it pretty much was. When it all came together, my passion for waterfowling and ducks and conservation is, really drives everything that I do on a daily basis. And so when I saw that, I really thought it was going to be a place where I wanted to be, and sure enough, it is exactly what I thought it was going to be, and then some. I'm fired up and impressed every year with the amount of work we can do, and just working with volunteers. It's very, very rewarding.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds interesting because your last name is Koyman, and then you like you had just mentioned, it was kind of in the journey through Ducks Unlimited, kind of intertwined in your early life. I know you had mentioned, maybe you can share with us maybe a story or an experience from your childhood that really solidified your connection with the wildlife, whether that's with ducks or waterfowl in general.
Well, there's a lot. My dad was very much involved with me in the outdoors, and that was a way that him and I could connect, even though we didn't get to see each other or talk to each other much. Because he worked construction, and I was swimming through junior high school and high school. So we were going in a lot of different directions, but we always made time to get together to go duck hunting. So when the season opened in Michigan, I can't recall a day or a weekend that we didn't go together. And so that really formulated my passion, because I can remember distinctly the very first time we went duck hunting, and we had an old sneak boat, I think it was probably back from the 50s or 60s, had a big plywood false front on it, and we drug that thing through miles of marsh, it seemed like. But I was little then, so 10 feet could have seemed like 100 yards. But we
Yeah.
drug that big old heavy boat through all that mud and got out to the other side where the open water was. And then with the sneak boat, you set your decoy spread up off the shoreline so that the divers in particular, the bluebills, redheads, would land in the decoys, and then you would push out in the sneak boat, and you'd have the gunner up front, which was me, and then my dad was in the back steering with an oar, and you would just use that big plywood front to hide behind, and also as a sail, and it would pull you in, with the wind into the decoys. And about the time we got to the front edge of those decoys, my dad was behind me, telling me that the ducks get nervous, get ready, and you're supposed to go ahead and push the plywood down. But I was so excited, I stood up and started shooting. Shot that bluebill on the first shot, and it was pretty cool, very exciting, and that just had me hooked, in waterfowling and now conservation, because you really can't have those experiences without conservation. So.
Absolutely. Wow. And that's so fascinating. I mean, when I think of duck hunting, I think of that fun little arcade game back in the day where, you shoot once and all the ducks fly out of the bushes there, but you were on the water experiencing these things with your father. And I think that really translates well to how Ducks Unlimited, has really formulated its brand over time. Now, I was doing some research, and I understand that Ducks Unlimited is united by its passion for hunting, outdoors, and conservation. For those listening that aren't familiar with it, I'd love to know from you, Sean, what does that mean to you, that brand and that call for being united? And can you give us some examples of how you showcase this unity to people inside and outside of your community?
Sure. I mean, it's the brand stands for conservation, and that to me is very important. And it's a testament when you actually see the work. A lot of the projects that I designed and built as a regional engineer for Ducks Unlimited, I take my wife and my dogs with me, and we apply for those hunts because it's all public hunting. And if we get drawn, we get to go. And then I get to go and hunt with my wife and my two labs on projects that I designed, 10, 15 years ago. So that's kind of bring it back full circle for me. That's the part that gets me passionate about it, and I think by delivering this message and showing people what DU is doing here locally is a big deal. And I think that brings it home to the local communities and even, specifically Virginia Beach. But moreover, the work that's done, the conservation work that's done for those migratory waterfowl goes way beyond just the borders of Virginia. It's, if you take a look at some of the science that we look at, in determining where and how we conserve, habitat. We're concerned about habitat all the way out in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Saskatchewan, Alberta type provinces and whatnot, as well as Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, the St. Lawrence River Valley. I mean, those are some other tremendous places where those birds begin their journey before they get here, and we can share those types of experiences with friends and families.
Wow, it's almost if, and I'm just kind of walking through this with you as you're explaining it, it's all connected in a lot of ways. I mean, we're part of the ducks journey, and the ducks are part of our journey. So it sounds like you and your efforts for conservation are just following the ducks along their journey and how it's connected to not only the communities, but also nature itself, to really preserve that for things that, like you said, 20 years ago, you were doing this project, and now you're able to see the fruits of your labor. That must be very satisfying for you.
It is. And I think everybody goes through that own personal journey with waterfowl, whether they, whether they're out there to watch them and enjoy them, in their own backyard, or they're out, taking friends and family out, out to the duck land. I think the journey is very similar, and I think that's where the passion comes in amongst all of the DU membership, to conserve that resource.
Wonderful, absolutely. So, Sean, I'd like to steer the conversation more so outwardly towards the direction of conservation as a whole. I'd love to chat with you about the role of conservation. So what role does conservation play in the modern world we live in? And in what ways do you think it is being most challenged right now?
Well, I'll start kind of in the rear of that of that and work my way the other way. The challenges are all over, for conservation. I mean, and it's a complex set of challenges too, because there's so many things competing for it, specifically the habitat, that and the wetlands that the waterfowl need, and so conservation really is about restoring and conserving those wetlands and those natural places for our waterfowl and wildlife. Just trying to think what would be the follow on to that. What was the other part of the question? Sorry, Jess.
Yeah, no, that's okay. You definitely answered it, and it sounds like just being aware of what you can do is of the utmost importance. So I'd like to ask another question for you. Ducks Unlimited has amassed a large following through social media. You guys have a podcast channel, YouTube, and you have 1 million plus followers. Sharing stories and the journey that connect people to one another and to nature. And in the midst of an ever-changing world, can you recall perhaps a specific story or situation that really resonates with you that really encapsulates this passion that you have for conservation?
Yeah, I mean, a fairly good story here just recently. So with our projects here in Virginia, the two of them in particular, we did this really cool plaque, if you will, for Green Wings, which are our youngest membership, 17 and under. But where they can purchase, or the parents can purchase, a legacy Green Wing membership, and that's for $200. It makes them a Green Wing member from age 1 to age 17 for the most part. And so with that, we did 2 projects on the ground here in Virginia, one at Princess Anne Wildlife Management Area there in Virginia Beach, and another one at Hog Island National Wildlife Management Area over in Surrey County. And in both of those projects, we did what we called a Green Wing Legacy plaque. And so parents were signing up their kids. We put their names on the plaque. And it was really cool and exciting to see the first one unveiled down at Princess Anne Wildlife Management Area. But the second one is at Hog Island. I've gotten a lot of pictures from parents that have taken their kids there for the youth waterfowl hunt in February. And the coolest part of that is getting the pictures with the kids pointing at their name on the plaque, and then having been there to see the work on the ground that Ducks Limited had done in partnership with the Virginia Department of Wildlife Resources. I mean, I just full circle, with getting the kids involved and letting them see what we actually do on the ground, and then having their name associated with it, I think is pretty neat. That was probably one of the most moving things I've had in my career is seeing those pictures from the parents with their kids in there.
Absolutely. And Sean, I really appreciate you sharing that, because going back to our last question, the what role does conservation play in the modern world? You answered it right there. I mean, it enables young people and our children to see the fruits of their labor, and also to give them an opportunity to, and forgive me if I'm overreaching here, or correct me if there's any other mission statement I'm missing from you guys, but to really challenge the next generation to be accountable for what they're doing in the community. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah. And taking our youth and helping them become the leaders of conservation that they want to be. I mean, things are changing. Things are being developed, at a pretty rapid pace. Just places where I've been have changed over the years. They don't even look the same. And functionally, I think that changes as well. So, conserving those habitats, specifically wetlands, that helps all of us. It helps, with the changing environment. It helps to clean our water. Wetlands are a key component of, stormwater management, and even just storm protection during floods and hurricanes and whatnot, especially with us in Virginia and Virginia Beach in particular. Just being along the coast is vitally important that we keep our health, we keep our wetlands healthy, and we conserve as much as we can.
Absolutely. It plays a significant part in our community, and also for the livelihood of the waterfowl and just sustainability overall. So Sean, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I want to be respectful of your time. I'm so disappointed, but I'm looking at the clock and we are almost to the end of time. So that brings us to our last segment here. Some rapid fire questions for you. Sean, are you ready?
Sure. Fire away.
With brand sponsors like Yeti, Mossy Oak brand, Camo, Bass Pro Shop, and Gunner, I'm sure you see a lot of great tools and gadgets out there. Can you highlight a few of the more essential tools you use when enjoying the outdoors?
Well, considering most of my time is in the dark, There are some huge advancements in either headlamps or spotlights, and a lot of these new LEDs lights are impressively bright, up to and including LED light bars and whatnot. So not one particular brand, but having a good headlamp, having a good floodlight, to be able to see what's going on at night, not only makes you safe, but it makes it more enjoyable too, because you kind of know where you're at and where you're going for the most part. So
Absolutely, absolutely. Question number 2, and I know you touched on this with the Greenleans legacy, so we can continue on with that mission as well. But for those of our listeners with young children or in their lives looking to explore the outdoors and get involved with conservation on a micro level, what are some things they can do around the yard or within our neighborhoods to help support the wildlife around us?
wow, well, that's a great question. And one of the things that they can do is get involved with their local DU chapter. We have a great program to help support Green Wings and youth, whether we're doing wood duck boxes, or nesting tubes, or anything of the like. But it takes people getting involved to help do that, and so volunteering to do some stuff with the kids, whether we're doing that actually at a wildlife management area, or hosting some other Green Wing event where we're bringing the kids out to learn about the safety of operating firearms, to kind of a hunting 101 kind of thing, or just simple duck identification, getting them to appreciate the waterfowl that are here or winter in Virginia. One quick thing to that is my nephew, he's 6 now, and for Christmas I sent him a full set of these little mini decoys. And now when we get to talk, or I call my parents and they're with my nephew, he pulls all those decoys out and he goes one by one, and he knows every duck's name now. So that's pretty cool.
Nice.
So hopefully we can spill over and grab our youth and get them to have as much appreciation for the resources we do.
Absolutely. Ducks, and more ducks. With that said, Sean, that brings us to our last rapid fire question. For you, what is your favorite type of duck of all time and why?
My favorite duck is probably the pintail, and I can't describe it, but it's very elegant in flight. I love the coloration of it. You'll see a few back there that are on the wall, and I for whatever reason, the pintail has always been my favorite duck. So
wonderful. Love it. Well, Sean, thank you for a great conversation. As we wrap up this very informative episode of Discover Virginia Beach, we'd like to extend a virtual red carpet to you, our esteemed guest. Sean, this is your moment to share any exciting projects or products that you're currently working on. Is there anything special you'd like to feature, or any final thoughts? The floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we talk about Ducks Unlimited, but it's, DU's not DU without its volunteers. And so we have a great chapter there in Virginia Beach, been around for probably 40 plus years. We've got a fundraising event coming up at the Military Aviation Museum on September 14th, 2023. We have tickets available online at www.virginiabeachdu.org. And that's really where you can come and have a great time and help raise some money for all of our conservation work, and a lot of that money goes to fund not only local projects, but our conservation work, around the country. That's very important to our migratory waterfowl. And locally, we've got some great projects, to share with folks as well, which, we can get into those details later. But, Princess Anne Wildlife Management Area, we conserved and restored about 223 acres there, put a pump station in, water control structures, some really, really cool work there. Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge, it's very similar, doing some levee work, water control structures, pump installation there, restored about 609 acres there at Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge.
We love Back Bay.
Yeah. And specifically, we're working on a weir restoration project at Lake Tecumseh, which is on the northern end of Back Bay. But it's a shallow water lake that becomes very turbid, and with high winds. I think they're primarily like south winds. And that turbidity, when the water recedes, usually goes back down into Back Bay, and that is one of the things that I guess impacts the health of the bay in terms of suspended solids and the turbidity of the water and whatnot. So working right now to do a little restoration on that weir to bring that back up to what it needs to be to able to hold back some of that water, and keep that turbidity up in the lake, proper. So pretty cool stuff.
Wow, a lot of great things going on. And for those of you listening to the audio file right now, please, if you're driving, do not try and write this stuff down. Just safely get to your next destination and check out the show notes with all of the links as well as the descriptions of all the fun stuff Sean has going on. And with that brings us to the end of another episode of Discover Virginia Beach. A big thank you to our wonderful guest, Sean Koyman, and to you, our dedicated listeners, for joining us on this journey. We hope you'll continue to explore the Virginia Beach area and come along with us as we look forward to sharing more and exciting discussions with you. Thank you and take care.